when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priess.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priess, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Donald. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just getting ready for the big holidays, as they say. I think.
In what way are you getting ready? What way?
No, in no way. I've given up, and I'm
You've
not.
got because I haven't seen
anything.
that. You're such a liar.
Getting all ready.
You're getting ready.
Uh-huh.
Such a liar.
See me get ready? Yeah, I mean, I've been out, fighting the crowds every day at the mall, go to the mall every day, walk around, look at things.
Like you
I haven't
do.
done that yet at all.
Like you do.
Not
No.
going to do that. Maybe I'll wait till Christmas Eve.
I did do that yesterday. I went to the mall,
Did
which I hate to do.
Oh, no, I know. You must have been in just hell. Just, just hell. Did you go see Santa? Did you sit
Santa
on his
was
lap?
there. No. Santa was in a house now. Now Santa is in a house, not outside.
He's in quarantine. He's
you
in
have to
quarantine.
make.
You have to go to the window.
You do, and you have to go. You have to set an appointment. It's not like the olden days.
Oh my God!
You have to set it. You have to set an appointment.
Do you have to do a COVID test before you walk in there? Or?
Yes, I think you do. I'm not kidding. I think you do.
And he's wearing a mask.
Well, you can't tell because of the beard.
Right.
It's like a 2 for 1.
I think you should put the mask under the beard. Yeah.
Well, it's a 2 for 1. It's like it is. So
well,
it's 2022, 2022, and it's Christmas time, and this will probably be the first Christmas since COVID that people can actually get together, right?
I think so. Last year, I think people were doing it, but not full force like I think this year. So. I know I have not been together with my family for, that's 3 years, 2020. Yeah, well, whatever is that?
No, it's not 3 years. 2 years, yeah.
I don't know. A long time.
It's been a long time.
It will be different. Yeah.
And this will be my first year without my mom. So, which is very, very strange. I know other people go. Everybody goes through it. It's just this little empty feeling. And when you go out and you see families together, or I see something that I know my mom would have loved, it's that phenomenon that they're just not here anymore. Even if she was, I was just going to say that even when my mom was in assisted living, I always felt so fortunate that I could go and visit her. I think I'm lucky because I can sit here, I can smush her and love her up and make her laugh and bring her presents and see her.
Yeah.
And so, the day is coming, but it's still hard. So my heart goes out to everybody that's going through this right now. And it's when you love somebody dearly, it's a hole in your heart, which is a great segue into our documentary, No Country for Old People, which is very much, it's my gift. It's a love letter in a way, in an ironic way, to my mom because of the suffering that she did in the last 6 months of her life. And that, I can take that and parlay it into a message. So it becomes a legacy, it becomes a tribute, and it becomes, a tool for her that she left me so that everything she experienced wasn't in vain. So that makes me feel, that gives me the power and it drives me. So I think, like they say, love songs don't come out of happiness, right? For the most part, they come out of pain. Like the best art comes out of pain. And that's what we have to do. We have to channel the things that have happened to us that have been the biggest challenges and then use them to for good.
Yes.
And that's what I'm doing. So
Yeah, and it's going to be so important, and we're right now in the process of raising the funds that will allow us to do this, and you can go on our website if you want to be part of the community that we're creating that will help get this thing going and get the word out there and help everyone. So,
and all your donations are 100% tax deductible. We are partnered with the National Consumer Voice of Quality Long-Term Care, and they are providing us a 501c3 status. So you'll get a gift of helping provide this really critical film, and also you'll get a tax deduction. So it's a win-win.
yeah.
If you're listening to this 2 years from now, never mind. We can really use your help, and it's for you. This film's for everybody. It's not for us. It's for everybody. And we have today such a cool guest all the way from the UK. That's the benefit of the virtual platforms that we have. I met this incredible human being online on one of my communities, and she had posted a video, what she was saying resonated so much to me. And I think it's interesting because my mom would always say water meets its own level, and it certainly does, because out of nowhere came this woman with this philosophy and this kind of strategy for dealing with people with dementia that just is spot on. So let's talk to her, Donald.
Let me tell you a little bit about her. Dr. Kellyn Lee is the founder of Wiser Health and Social Care Limited and the Dementia Care Hub, supporting people living with dementia both at home and in formal care settings.
Think about the objects that you use every day. If I took them all away from you, how would your day go?
A BPS Chartered Psychologist with over 11 years' experience in research in aging and dementia, Dr. Lee has lectured in psychological research methods and fundamentals in older persons' complex care. She is the chair of the Innovation and Impact Board for the Institute of Health and Social Care Management and the former co-director of the Doctoral Training Centre for Dementia Care at the University of Southampton. As an academic, Dr. Lee has developed a new approach to dementia care, material citizenship, which focuses on the role or function of everyday physical objects and tasks in the caring process. It's a fascinating new advance in dementia care, and we have approximately, I'd say, 1 million questions. So let's wait no longer and say hello to Dr. Kellyn Lee. Hello, Dr. Lee.
Hello, thank you for having
Hi,
me.
Dr. Lee. First of all, could you have more credits? That's my tribute to Matthew Perry. Could you have
I only
more?
said a few of them.
I've been doing it a while.
Not that while. I mean, you've packed it in, my friend. You've done a lot. I'm so fascinated with your material citizenship and what you do. And first, a little background. What brought you to this focus of people that are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's?
So I guess for me, it started back in the mid-1990s when I was 19 years old, and I worked in what we call a care home. So when I'm talking about a care home, we're talking about long-term care facilities. So when I talk about care homes, it could be something that in the UK is a residential home. So it's somewhere where people go that they're still usually very able-bodied, they can still look after themselves, but just need a bit more support. Or it could be a nursing home where there would be a registered nurse on every shift, and they provide nursing care. But what we are starting to find is that actually people with dementia are in all of them. So in the UK, around 80% of people living in care homes have a dementia of some kind. So when I was working in a care home back in the mid-1990s, dementia wasn't something that was really that widespread in relation to knowledge. People were called senile, or it was this sense of it was just
right.
It was old age, it was forgetfulness, it was what happened as a normal part of the aging process. But what I saw then was that people that were living in care homes lacked real choice and control over their lives. So although they were paying out large sums of money to live in these places, they weren't actually being listened to. They had to and that's not because there was any malice involved or because the care staff didn't care, because actually some of the relationships that you see with people that are living in a care home and also the staff, there is a real strong relationship between them. They care about each other. However, for some reason within this environment, there is a situation in which there are two vulnerable groups. You have a group of people that are care staff who are undervalued, and you have a group of people because of their age and because of the fact that they may have dementia. There is still ageism that is widespread in care homes, that you don't need to do anything because you're old. You've had your life. You're less valuable. All the wisdom that you have as an older person, actually, we're really not that interested. Well, I am. So for me, it actually stemmed out of the injustice of people that are living in these spaces that deserve to be listened to, whose voices deserve to be heard, who currently, or not currently, for a long time haven't been.
Oh my God, I so agree with you 100%. This is why I loved listening to you. I really resent that perspective that people at a certain age are no longer valuable, that they have nothing to contribute. Without sounding mercenary, it just feels that it always goes back to money, and that's what makes that assigns your value. Children have a future, so they are potentially, worth a lot. I met so many people in my mom's assisted living along the way in this 16-year journey I've had that became really good friends of mine. And these were people in their 90s. I don't know if it's exactly the same in the UK. I get a feeling it is, but we don't like to look at age. We don't look at it, so we put it away, and therefore we don't have to be afraid of it or deal with it or learn how to understand it, because I remember walking into assisted living with my family, and members of my family were, and I was too, a little overwhelmed, right? And not knowing how to communicate properly. And it didn't take that long. Dawn, you were there. You get it. You were with me.
And you all of a sudden just realize, they're just people.
Talking about age and it not being something it's something that we want to avoid. How many anti-aging products can be out there, and how many messages do we get as, particularly as women, and the majority of people that are working in care and in care are female. So, you have this whole sense of anti-aging. Aging isn't something that we want to do. We don't want to get old, although we want to live a long life. We don't want to get old, which is strange in itself. But if you have this low value on age, and then you throw dementia into the mix, okay, so not only are you trying to push age, we don't want to see that, but equally what we do, if I don't look at dementia as mental health, I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's useful. If we look at it as a disability, it's much more helpful. If somebody had a car accident and had a brain injury, it would be seen as a disability. That person would then be supported to live the best life they possibly could, given the circumstances. We don't do that with dementia, although they are, it's a progressive disease of brain injury. Okay, so if you look at the aging process and you have, this is something that we don't want to be, so let's get rid of old people, let's put them away somewhere, because it's not something that we want to see. And then you put dementia into that, and if we look at it from a mental health perspective, which many do, what do we do with people that have poor mental health? We also put them away. You will see this quite a lot in relation to some of our care homes in the UK. Where are the people with dementia? They're usually segregated, and they're usually on the top floor, because we don't want people with dementia mixing with other people. And I had this very conversation yesterday with a member of staff at a care home who I know delivers great care. I've seen the care that she gives, but she made a comment. She said, I wouldn't want to live with people with dementia. I wouldn't want to, would you? And I said, I want to stop you right there. You need to hear what you are saying, because what you are saying is that segregation is fine. All people with dementia should be put in one place, and we don't want to mix with them. She said, I don't mean that. I said, but that is what you are saying. And if you are verbalizing that, you keep this negative narrative of dementia going, that dementia in some way is the worst thing you can possibly have. Okay. Now, in relation to dementia, mild, moderate, severe, yes, there is a progression. Yes, would I want to have it? No, I wouldn't. But that doesn't mean that we can't live well with it. And the more we talk about it in a positive way, the capabilities of people, the things that they can do, how we support them to live well for longer, that will change society's view of what dementia represents. But we have to be really careful with the words that we use.
Exactly. And I think when you were talking, it brought to mind like somebody with, say, MS, right? And who, that's a progressive disease. And some people live very long with it. And I had a girlfriend who died within a year in 32, she was 32 years old. We don't know how fast or slow it's going to progress. But we treat it, and we try to live, try to live as best a quality of life as we can. By definition, they start losing their certain skills. Sometimes they end up in wheelchairs. Sometimes they can't speak. Sometimes they can't breathe. But does that mean that? Why are we not segregating them? Do you know what I'm saying? And why is that more acceptable? It is the same thing. It's a progressive disease. And why is it? Because it happens to younger generation, part of the generation.
And it's really interesting you saying that, because the next part that we had the discussion about was, I said to her, right, okay, so if you have two friends, you have two people that are living in a care home and they've become good friends, so they're companions to each other, they have a lovely friendship. There's a chance that one of those people that's living in that care home, if they haven't got dementia, may well develop it whilst they're in the care home. So what would you do? Would you separate them and move one upstairs and keep the other one downstairs? No. I said, but that's what you are saying. If you are saying that people with dementia should be in the same place, then what you are saying is that relationship they have, you would break that. And what would that do to their quality of life? If you have two people that are husband and wife that are living together, and one has dementia, and then one, has a stroke and then has a medical need, so can no longer support the person with dementia, and they move into a care home as a couple, are you saying that you would split them up because they couldn't be on the same floor? Who is this of benefit to? Because it's certainly not of benefit to them.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think some of that normalization, one of the things, Susie, where your mom was, they did not split them up. Everyone, it was, and I think that socialization, place? The last one.
Oh, the long-term care. But generally, Dawn, just to interject, they do here because my mom, when the place right before, it was like the first floor was the healthy-minded. The second floor was cuckoo's nest.
And I think are they doing that? Is it? Most of them, are they doing it because they don't want to burden the other? It's like, we don't want the people coming in, or they don't want the residents hanging around with that because it's a burden, or is it more just it's easier on the staff, or why are they doing it?
Well, I can tell you this, and maybe you can let me know if this happens in the UK. I had a guest on our show who his wife has early onset, and they just recently, they've been running marathons around the world since she was diagnosed, and that's been they basically took off like nomads and decided to do this while she could still do it. And now they've moved into an assisted care, and very recently, she needs a little help with eating now. And some of the other residents complained. They don't want to see it. They don't want to watch him help her.
It's multi-layered. There isn't one reason why it's done. I think historically, the reason it was done was because you keep the mad people out of the way. So the mad and the bad go upstairs, okay? Because then people coming through the door, visitors coming through the door, they're less likely to have contact with them. So also, if they're shouting, if they're screaming, if there's anything like that going on, hopefully the noise won't travel downstairs. So historically, I think it came from that. I think now it's multi-layered in relation to, it can be that other residents don't want to see it. I don't want to be around those people, because actually there's a lot of people that live in care homes that don't see themselves as being old enough to be in there. And I
Probably
think that's the
all
thing
of
with
them.
all of us. Yeah, and I think all of us, we still feel, a lot younger than we actually are, and that kind of thing. But also from a practical perspective, it seems to be that care organisations say, well, if it's nursing care on this, we have everything we need for them on that floor. And then if it's a dementia floor, it makes practical sense. But I think it is incredibly divisive, and I think it's fundamentally wrong, because equally what you can get is staff saying, I don't want to work with people with dementia, because they hear these stories that tend to be, always the worst case scenario, and yet there are, millions of people that aren't aggressive, that don't do these things, and actually there are people that don't have dementia that can actually have behaviours that others find challenging. But there seems to be this sort of association between dementia and behaviours that people find challenging. So that's what's in their mind. So actually, I'd rather not work with those people. And that's what it is, those people.
Those
And I have
people.
to say, it isn't those people. We're all human beings, okay? And actually, if you don't mix people up, how do you ever experience the difference and the diversity of people? Because you are
Amen.
just, you keep segregating there isn't a cancer village. There isn't an
Right.
MS village, but there are
Right.
dementia villages. Why do we do this? Because we don't want to see it. Well, tough. We need to see it because we need to learn to live with it.
Amen. I have a little granddaughter who just turned 3, and she was born without a corpus callosum, which is her membrane between the two halves of her brain. In essence, she's just a little delayed, and that's all due to mechanics. She goes to a preschool now, where it's all levels of different kinds of delay, and I found it so touching. I actually posted a picture of her in our community, because there was a little girl, and the teacher was trying to help her gain balance. And Eden, my granddaughter's 3, ran over to her and held her by the arm to help her walk on this balance beam, to help her with her balance. Instinctually, she did that. And if they weren't mixed, if they weren't put together on different levels, how would she learn that empathy? How would she learn to just be part of a community and not judge it, but just help it? And I found it so profound that she did that. And that's it.
This is where material citizenship is useful, because with material citizenship, what we are doing is we are saying we look at the capabilities of a person, not the deficits. So we aim high from the beginning. Okay, so what we are doing is we are looking at, I can give you some examples of how we make dementia look worse, how the environment and the people in it make a dementia look worse. So if people don't have the objects that they need to continue everyday routines, when I get up in the morning, that hairbrush that I use, the coffee cup that I drink out of, the hair straighteners I use to straighten my hair, these are my routines, okay? So if I move from my own home, generally in the UK, a large majority of people that have dementia will have a hospital admission. So they'll go into hospital, it may be a fall, it may be a UTI, it may be anything. At that point, a decision is made that perhaps they shouldn't return home, that actually they need to go into a care home. They're not always included in that decision-making process. They don't get to choose the care home they want to go to. They may, and certainly in this country, I can sit there with a whole group of care home staff and say, which one of you is moving into a care home when you're older? And all of them will say no. And I'm saying, but you work in one, and you are saying you wouldn't want to be here. Okay, so when a person moves into that care home, straight away, they're at a disadvantage, because it's a new environment of which they're not sure of. They may not understand, and not because of the dementia, but they may not understand why the decisions have been made in relation to why they're there in the first place. They haven't chosen the place, they don't want to be there. So when I keep asking, when am I going home? I want to go home, I want to go home. That is seen as dementia. It's seen as a symptom. Well, actually, my argument would be, no, it's just because nobody's actually given you a reasonable response. Nobody is actually telling you the truth some of the time. Sometimes somebody would say, oh, you're on holiday, don't you worry. Okay, they know that that's not true. And so does the person with dementia know that that's not true. So I will keep on asking you this question. Okay, I'm not saying that everything isn't a symptom of dementia, but I think we need to work on the basis. Is this a reasonable response to what is going on for me right now? Or is it a symptom of dementia, rather than jump into the symptom? So you have somebody that's in a care home. They haven't chosen to be in there. They haven't got their belongings. So all of those routines that would make you feel safe, psychologically safe, this makes sense to me because this is how I typically live my life. All of those things have been removed because you don't need them in here. Why? Because we will look after you. And because we will look after you, you don't need those things. We have a hairdresser on site that you would see maybe once every 2 weeks. So you don't need your curling tongs, your hair straighteners, the hairdryer that you would choose to use. We have cups in here, so you don't need your own mug because actually we've got all of that stuff already. So all of these items are overlooked. And yet if we didn't have those items, if we were in our own home, if we came in and everything had moved or everything had disappeared, we would be incredibly confused. So you put somebody with dementia in a strange environment without their family members, so they're feeling unsafe already. Okay, and then they haven't got their objects that they need in order to carry out those the routines that they would typically do. Everything then becomes a symptom of dementia. People are walking into each other's rooms, stealing things, or perhaps they're walking into each other's rooms because they're looking for the objects that are missing. People are wandering. Well, no, people are walking. We all walk, and actually we need to look at why is that person walking. Okay, people that are getting up to try and do stuff in the kitchen areas, or take a cup to the sink. So a member of care staff will politely, don't you worry about that, I'll take that for you, you sit down. They're doing it out of care, but actually the care is misplaced. Because what you are doing is you are chipping away at a person's identity. They no longer understand who they are, why they're there, and what is going on. And all that does is feed into a really negative narrative of dementia, because that's what people will say. That's the dementia. And actually my argument is, I would say it isn't dementia unless we can say that it isn't a reasonable response to what is going on for that person. I would react like that.
Caring for them into oblivion, because you're right, like you said, it I'm sure for the most part it comes from a good place. But you're so right, because I remember when my stepfather died, and my mom was at the funeral, and like as we were waiting to get the car, she said, "Oh wait, we have to wait for George." She had forgot, right? Well, that's a part of the disease. That doesn't mean she doesn't understand. That's just part of the disease. No. We all forget. How many times do we walk into a room and go, why was I here? Does that mean that we're worthless? We really don't know why we were there. It'll come, but we don't know. And I remember my brother said to me, why do you care? Just tell her that he's out. Well, I couldn't, because I knew that if I told her in a gentle way every time she asked me, which she did, when I moved her in with me, and it was like Groundhog's Day. And it took only like 2 weeks for her to get it to stick. And the last time she asked me, she said, "Where's Georgie?" And I just looked at her, gave her time to think about it, and she said, "He passed, right?" And I said, "He sure did, Mom." Last time she asked me.
And this is the thing, there are, with dementia, of course, is a cognitive impairment, and it will progressively get worse.
Yes.
However, we assume the worst straight away. As soon as somebody has that diagnosis, yes, it's a huge blow, not just for the person, but equally for the family around them. But what we tend to do is become overly protective out of a place of love. Okay? Right. So out of a place of love, we try to protect people. We stop them doing things. We, in effect, stop them living the life that they want to live. And particularly for people that are living in a care home, because care is undervalued. There aren't enough staff working in care homes that have our high levels of people living with dementia. We do have to spend a bit more time with people that are living with dementia. As you just said, give somebody that time, say something and then wait and see what the response is. But what happens is that we rush people into things, and because they can't do things as quickly as we want them to, and we haven't got time, we then start doing everything for people, which makes them overly dependent upon us, which actually increases the workload rather than decreases. And the other thing is that when you start doing everything for somebody, you're not listening to what they are actually saying to you because they've got dementia. What happens? They become, there are a few things that can happen. One, they become compliant, which I would say is probably the worst thing to see. If somebody's become compliant, they've just lost the will. They've lost the fight. They don't want to fight anymore, Or somebody does want to fight, and actually they're the people that I want to see, because they are the people these are the people sometimes that have these behaviours that challenge, but actually what they are doing is they're fighting for their sense of self. They are fighting for somebody to listen. Okay, so if I give you an example, there was a man who was on the top floor of the care home. There was a ground floor and a top floor, and there was a lock in between the two, on the door. So nobody could leave and go downstairs unless they were assisted by a member of staff. Right. So he was a smoker. He'd always been a smoker. He was 94 years old, He would have a cup of coffee in the morning, he'd have his breakfast, and then what I would notice is it walking up and down. So I'm thinking, he needs a cigarette, that's what he wants. What had happened was, because nobody was noticing that he wanted this cigarette, he knew his cigarettes were downstairs. He knew he needed to be downstairs in order to get them. So what happened was, when somebody went to come through the door, he would start pushing people out of the way to get downstairs. That was then seen as aggressive behaviour, that his dementia had got worse, and let's instruct a medical intervention. I then stepped in and said, hold on a minute, I don't think we need a medical intervention here. I think what he needs to be is downstairs. His bedroom was still upstairs, but during the day he was then downstairs. No aggression was seen.
See, that's I just don't even, I'm speechless, because I keep thinking it's so obvious, but I guess it's not, because I know that it took me a second to understand dementia, but it didn't take that long to figure out that as you're losing your skills, cognitive skills, it's not dissimilar to children, right? They're gaining their skills, but they don't have enough skills. So when they don't have the tools to say something, they might have and they're frustrated, they might have a temper tantrum. Well, there's a reason why they're doing it. They're not crazy. They just don't have the tools to tell you what they want, and or describe their frustration. They just don't. So do you want to punish them, or do you want to say, what's going on? What's frustrating you? Let's talk about it. This is a better way to get what you want. Tell me and I'll help you.
But
right?
If society assumes, and it's largely assumed, that with dementia are all these negative behaviours, that as soon as you see one of them, you associate that with dementia. I'll give you another example. There was a woman who, again, lived on the top floor of this care home, and she would get changed 3 times a day. She'd get changed in the morning, she'd get changed at lunchtime, she'd get changed again in the evening. And what she would do is she'd just throw her clothes around the room, So what happened was, she would leave the room, staff would walk past, doing their job, they would pick up the clothes and take them to the laundry. Well, we're also talking about a generation of people that don't wash their clothes after every single wear. They may wear them for a few days before putting them in the wash. So she would then go back to her room, and she would become very distressed because somebody's been in my room and they're taking my things. So then she would walk around with a radio under her arm, and then staff would say, that's the dementia. It wasn't the dementia. It was because this was an unsafe place. I can't leave anything in my room because things go missing. So I'm going to carry this with me. She also wanted a pair of curling tongs because she would say to me, oh, Kellyn, I love your hair. It's blonde. And, I want blonde hair. And I'd say to her, well, why don't you have blonde hair? Well, because the hairdresser doesn't have blonde. Why? Because it's It's not an old person colour. Okay. So then she also didn't have her curling tongs. So I would say to her, well, said to a member of staff, why hasn't she got her curling tongs? Well, because she might burn herself.
Right.
Okay, so has she ever had curling tongs in here? No. So how do you know that she'll burn herself? I just know she can't have them. So, but when she looked in the mirror, she would say, I don't recognise myself. And staff would assume, again, that's dementia because she doesn't recognise who she is. It wasn't. It was because she says, Kellyn, I don't have flat grey hair. I have blonde hair that's curled. So all these associations in relation to dementia, that wasn't true. She just needed the things in order to maintain her identity. Had she had her curling tongs and her hair dyed, and also had her room with her clothes left in it and nobody taking them, she would have been absolutely fine. But everybody associated everything she did with dementia, and she probably had one of the mildest dementia I've seen for somebody that lives in a care home. It didn't need to be that way. And what I saw was her mental health go through the floor.
Right.
Her sense of self, her sense of belonging, and she died not long after. And I don't think I think she died too early.
We're stripping everybody of their individuality, right? So we're taking away everything and just saying that you are now this. That's it. That's all you are. You are a person with dementia.
You're a resident. You're a resident.
You're a resident with
that's
dementia.
A dehumanization process straight away.
Totally. I get it 100%.
So now let's look at this in the practical, which is, what you've come up with is material citizenship. Mm-hmm. And, so much of that is, just little objects that are familiar around them can help ground them. And so they don't feel like they're in this strange world where they have nothing to relate to. But possibly more important is what you analyzed the situation. You looked at the situation. How do we train the people who are basically taking care of them to recognize these things? Because right now they don't have enough time to do what they're doing. They don't have enough staff. Let's say they're understaffed.
That when you say they don't have time, which we hear here as well, because they're labor intensive. Why are they more labor intensive than someone who's rehabilitating from a broken hip and they need to go through physical therapy? Like, why? That takes time. What are we?
Right. I'm not saying the daily time. I'm talking even the time to just train them, to train them properly. So what is that process?
So I developed the Material Citizenship training program. So there's a leadership workshop. So I think the one thing that I was really clear on is that care staff do an amazing job. Okay, and they're in the business of care because they want to make a difference. However, quite often they're not given permission to care, because they are given task-orientated jobs to do to people, because that's what care looks like from a regulatory perspective. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure people aren't being harmed. We need to make sure that people are safe. But I guess my argument is that safety has gone too far. We don't allow people to do anything in case they are physically harmed. And material citizenship mitigates that. So it says, right, okay, well, where is that a real risk or is that a perceived risk? And actually, what's the psychological risk of not allowing that person to do that? One, they will become overly dependent upon you. So when we're looking at people being time poor, and I had this conversation with a group of nurses and carers yesterday when I was delivering material citizenship training, and I said to them, yes, I understand that you're time poor, but because you are giving everybody the same care, because this is what you need to do to people, you've actually got a percentage of people in this care home that may well be able to do things for themselves, but they can't because they haven't got the objects that they need in order to be able to do that. You're not opening up this facility enough. So if I give an example, yes, we can't have people that are living in the care home going into the kitchen to make their own breakfast. But what we could have, even if you don't have a purpose-built kitchenette area, you could have cereals and milk and fruit and stuff that's on a table that people can come out and actually get it for themselves. So what you can be doing is you can be spending more time with people that need the care at a higher level. And actually what will happen is, as time goes on, those levels will change and new people will come in and you will be given care that is proportionate to those people rather than just giving the same care to everybody. So that is where you can maybe claim back some time. Equally, if you have people that are frustrated, are not listened to, are feeling, all of these negative emotions, the chances are they are going to want your attention a lot more than if they're actually okay. So what you will get is you will get call bells that are ringing all the time. You'll get people, nurse, 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 nurse. Okay, so that has an impact on care, because then staff become overwhelmed by that, and then when they become overwhelmed, the job seems even bigger. So actually what I'm saying is, if we go back to when somebody moves into our care home, or people that are currently living in a care home, how did you live your everyday life before you came in here? What kinds of things did you do? Not you, we know about your hobbies, we know about your occupation, we know about your family makeup. But actually, what did you do, and what did you do them with? Did you have tea or coffee? What kind of cup would you have had? Can you show me on my phone, pick a cup, which one would you have wanted? Because actually, by drinking out of the cup that I want, I'm also more likely to drink more, which will also help my physical health. So I won't get a UTI, end up in hospital, or have any complications.
Right.
So if we work back to, how did you live your life at home? Okay, what would you like to do in here? What object can we assign to those things? So one member of staff yesterday talked about a woman that she had actually cared for in her own home, and then she'd moved into the care home, and this member of care staff now happens to be working in the care home. And she said, I noticed that she, in her shower at home, she had this kind of pink squeegee thing that she used, and she also had a pink puffer that she would dab talc over herself. And I've noticed she doesn't have any of those things in here. So if we enable people to have these things, to maintain this sense of self through the objects, not only does it enable them to live the life that they want to live, be less dependent upon staff, but it equally means that staff can get to know them better. So I can know who you are, and therefore, if I know who you are and what you like, I can support you in that way. If you are living a better life, you are probably going to be less work to me than you are if you're unhappy.
Right. Can I ask you a question in terms of, a sense of purpose? When my mom was living with me, we tried to give her as much responsibility that she would like. And I noticed when she moved into the assisted living, my mom was, when she became wheelchair bound, and there was one woman who had, her own disabilities, but she took a liking to my mom, and when my mom was trying to get somewhere, she would come over to her. She was from Sweden, who would always say, Norma, let me help you, and it gave her a sense of purpose, and gave my mom, it's a sense of community, right? Which we why don't they have that? I mean, it feels like that's a huge thing that's missing too, is this sense of community that would bring back the humanity of life, as opposed to, like you said, a resident.
And I guess that is because it's what a care home represents. A care home represents a place that typically, if we're talking about older person care, so in the UK it's anybody over the age of 65. What a care home represents is people sat around doing nothing while staff do everything for them. So we need to flip that, and actually we need to be living together. This is a community. We also need to have people that are living in care homes being able to go out into the community and still be part of life outside of a care home, rather than sort of locked away. They don't go to the GP anymore. They don't go to the doctor because the doctor comes to them. They don't go out to the hairdressers and have that sociable time anymore. Why? Because the hairdresser's brought in. They don't actually go out and have that life anymore. And I guess for care staff, they are paid to do a job. And if they don't do that job, if something isn't done, they are the one that's going to be blamed for it. Equally, if they allow somebody to support somebody else and something goes wrong, well, why did you allow them to do that? And that's again where material citizenship comes in, because we say, well, actually, by using this method, it gives you a safety net, because you can show why you are doing this, how you are doing this, and the impact that it has. But also, more importantly, we can also show the negative impact of not being allowed to live your life. And by introducing these things, we can actually get rid of a lot of the behaviours that other people find challenging.
Agreed.
Doesn't the pushback from the top, when you talk about, oh, let's, let her have the curling tongs or whatever, it's all about liability. Everyone's worried about liability, about getting sued, or, and isn't that the major pushback that you have to fight against? And how do we overcome that?
And you're right. There is this sense of, we don't want something bad to happen. One, because we could lose our registration as a care home, so the care home could close. We could be sued by a family member because they're not happy with what was going on. So I guess in relation to material citizenship, what we are looking at is we are looking at including relatives in this as well. So
Yes.
we are saying to relatives, so if you come into the care home and you see your mum doing the hoovering and you're saying, hold on a minute, I'm paying £2,000 a week for her to be here. What is she doing the hoovering? Well, the reason she's doing this hoovering is because what we've noticed is she's really happy doing this.
Yep.
This is what we've noticed. We've noticed her levels of well-being changed. We've noticed that she's brighter after doing it. We've noticed these things. So this is why we do it. But it's very much working with the relatives from the beginning, because, then it's all of you that are included in that care process. You've got your formal carers, you've got your family members who are still carers, and you've also got the person that is living with dementia. So actually, if we can all see that, we talk about meaningful, we talk about purpose, we talk about dignity. It isn't meaningful, dignified, or purposeful to get somebody to do an activity that they really don't want to do, but it looks okay because we're keeping them busy. However, if I can show that your mum, who may have been, particularly the generations that we're talking about at the moment, may well have been a domestic housewife. Her purpose and her meaning, if this is her home, would be looking after that home. So this is what we are showing. What we're also showing is that actually we've enabled her to do that. We've supported her to do that. And we've checked at the same time whether there are any real risks. Is there anything that is showing up that says that actually maybe she needs more support with that? So we can show that within, it doesn't have to be a massive, big, a risk assessment, but we are constantly reviewing the care. And actually this is part of care. So in relation to, we have something called the Care Quality Commission. So they are the independent regulators that will come in. We also have safeguarding to make sure that people aren't hurt or exploited or abused in any way. But if we can take this, because this is it's based in research, it's based in evidence, we can say, well, actually, this isn't just an idea that we've had that's a nice to do. This is a rights-based approach, and actually people, from a human rights perspective, have the right to access their belongings. They also have the right to choose where they live. Okay, so we have a rights-based approach. We also have the Mental Capacity Act, which tends to work against people, so but we could draw on that as well. And what we are showing is, from this evidence-based programme, which is material citizenship, we are showing that this is well thought through, it's documented, and it's, we have the evidence to show why we are doing it, as opposed to we're just doing it without thinking. That's a much stronger position for staff to be in, because they can say, we are using material citizenship, we are documenting it in this way, so it shows from an audit perspective what the scenario was, what the object is, what the problem was, and what the impact is since we've introduced that.
Right.
It's always up for review. So if that person, if their situation changes, if the dementia, as the dementia progresses, they may also have some other medical, condition. They may have a stroke. They may develop a cancer. We will constantly review, because that's what we should be doing anyway, rather than just saying, this is who you are, this is what you do, and this is what it's going to be like for the rest of your life.
Can you liken it to, like, what if, I don't like meat and I was served meat every meal, and that's what you get. And then suddenly you're losing weight, and suddenly, you you don't really feel like going to eat anymore because it's not anything you like. And so you begin to deteriorate emotionally and physically. That's the same thing as throwing a blanket over, these activities as if that is what, everybody at that age suddenly likes to do arts and crafts. They don't.
They weren't doing them before they
My
got
mother
there.
didn't want to do arts and crafts. She would go to me, what's going on here? What's this bullshit? What is this? Right? I mean, my mom was a sophisticated woman. Suddenly she's cutting flowers out with a safety scissor. She doesn't want to do that.
And this is where material citizenship says that we have to balance physical harm alongside psychological harm. Because what we are currently doing is we are making sure that people are alive, that they're clean, that they're fed, that they're watered, that they're medicated. What we are not doing is checking in on them to see, are you okay? Are you having, I'm not saying that you're having the best life, but actually, are we doing enough? Are we supporting you in a way that you want to be supported? And it's about choice and control. I could move into a care home and say, I don't want to do a thing. You're going to do everything for me. That's my choice. I'm happy with that.
Right.
It's when you remove everything from me, and any of us without dementia, if we had no control and choice over our lives, the negative impact of that is huge. You look at COVID, when we were locked away, and how mental health went through the floor. Okay, that's like being in a care home. If we look at it in that way. And when we're talking about meaningful activity, a meaningful activity to me may be washing up. It may be, making my own cup of tea. It may be buttering some bread for ready for lunch, because actually that's what I want to do. It doesn't mean putting stars on a piece of paper and saying who the employee of the month is. You know what I mean? It's
Yes,
what is
I
important
do.
to me. And if this is my home, it's not just about objects that make the place look familiar. Because also what I found in my research was that typically the person's belongings are in their room, and they're encouraged to spend the majority of the time out of the room of which their possessions are anyway. So why are we not having people's possessions in the same space that where they spend time? Why are there not family photos on the wall that I can show you who my family are? I can share my life with you. Because we spend a huge
That's
amount
a
of money
great
trying to-
idea, Kellyn. I love that idea.
We spend so much money in care homes trying to make them look good and look homely. Well, people have already got their stuff to make it look homely.
Oh my
But
gosh, I
actually
love that. That's so simple.
The thing is that it has a deep theoretical basis in relation to
Yes.
object-person relationships, but actually the practice of it is simple and everybody gets it. So when I talk to staff in the training, I get them to think about the objects that are important to them. We then do something where we take them away and leave them with just a couple, and then we say, how are you feeling? Well, I don't like it. Okay, what is it that you don't like? What might I see? Well, I'd be very angry. I'd be really okay. So if now you've got dementia, what does that look like? Oh, yes. All of a sudden, staff go, that light bulb moment. I am now recognising what we are doing, and I don't want to do that anymore because that would impact me. Okay, so I'm choosing not to. But we also have to make sure that staff are safe to be able to do that. They are given permission to do that, which is why
Yes.
it's important to have it from the top down,
Top
as well
down.
as bottom up. So the leadership workshop, they have to buy into this, because they have to say, we are giving you permission to do this because it's different to how we've always done things. You can't allow staff who are on a minimum wage, who have very little training, to go, because we want people in care homes to be creative and autonomous, and yet as soon as they are, we tell them not to be, because
Right.
that's not the way it's done. So material
Right.
citizenship is saying, this isn't just about dementia, this is just about how we think about people. And we can do it in this way.
Down to the entertainment that they would bring in. My mom was a singer, and my girls and I sing, and we'd go, any day we were there, it would be kumbaya. We'd be singing everything from,
show
standards
tunes
to Neil Diamond, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And everyone would be hanging around, all the 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, whatever. They're hanging out. We had a good time. And then, I'd visit when they had the shows, and I'd get so much eye rolls. The entertainers would be patronizing to the people that lived there, as if
They're treating them like children.
right?
Yeah.
Like children. And these are adults that have fabulous lives. And I used to, when my mom was in long-term care in the last 6 months, I'd say, I know you don't know this woman, but I do. And she's a fierce, fabulous woman. And she's not a gray lump laying in that bed. Please.
And I guess that's where, with material citizenship, what it does is it makes care a tangible thing. Because when you talk about care, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How do I know that real person-centered care is taking place? So I guess for me, it's that thing, because I can say that person has been included in decision making because they've got their objects. I've heard that person because the objects are in the care home. And I'm also supporting that person to live the life they want to live because they're unable to interact with them. So what we do is, with the objects that somebody has, we're making care tangible. We can show it, it's explicit. And also, if you imagine a life in which material citizenship exists in a care home, when you get people coming into the care home who are doing activities and stuff, I would bet you any money they would treat people differently if they came in and saw a busy home of people doing stuff, rather than walking in to a room with chairs around and people just sat waiting for something to happen to them.
You think? Yep.
Yeah. This is also important even for those without dementia. My mom just went into a long-term care facility. We moved her from her 3-bedroom home with full garage and all her stuff from her entire life there, and had to whittle everything down to a 1-bedroom, 600 square foot, place. And the things, when we were moving her, the things that she was like, she was telling us, I want that. I want to keep that. Now, it was virtually everything, and we knew realistically we couldn't do that. She kept greeting cards from everyone she ever had in her whole life. And in boxes. She never looked at them, ever. She never looked at them, but she wanted to keep those just to know she had them.
It was a sense of
she doesn't have dementia, but I think this can be implemented for anyone moving into long-term care.
Well, it just validates what Kellyn is saying, is that,
Yes, exactly.
Because if you have dementia, you don't have the voice sometimes to articulate that. So your mom has the voice, so she can articulate it. And she can tell you how important it is that she has her dinnerware. Just in case that when she goes to see it, you never know. And, and I was thinking exactly that, Dawn, when Kellyn was talking about that so much. I was thinking, of course.
And you think of, the experience that you had with your mum in relation to, trying to sort through a whole home. And, we have loads of research that, that talks about the disbandment of objects and kind of displacement, when you move somewhere and all of your belongings are left somewhere else, or, you have to get rid of a whole history. So, none of us would ever move house and not choose which belongings we would take with us. There's a sense of closure as well, to a degree, that, okay, and I'll give that to such, and I'll give that to them, and that can go to charity, and I'm happy with what's happened, because actually this is my life. This is my life in pieces. So as a person moving into a care home with dementia, if they've gone, there was one woman who was 69 in the care home, and her son said, if I'd have taken my mum home to collect all her belongings, we would still be there now, because she wouldn't have wanted to leave anything. He said, and actually going through all the belongings, that was my life as well. It was my history as well. Yeah. So it's a really hard thing to do. But for somebody living with dementia who moves from hospital straight to the care home, the sense of loss, the loss of my life, the loss of my home, and I don't even know what's happened to my belongings. who would we ever do that to?
Nobody.
You know, we talk about sort of refugees being displaced and having to move to another, and we rally around, and rightly so, we rally around and we get them the bits and pieces that they would want to make home again. With a
Right.
person with dementia, we just go, right, okay, there you go. You don't need
Yep.
all of that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You don't need that. I don't. And
'Cause we
I'm
say so.
guilty of. We're so guilty of it ourselves. We were the same thing. We're like, Mom, what are you ever going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? What, do you really need that? You know.
Farrah,
you
you
have to
guys were great
practically.
with her. You guys were very good with her because they went
I
through
still
every
feel
piece of
bad about
clothing,
some
and
of it.
no, but you did a great job. But I was thinking about also, like, even when you go on vacation, and we tend to bring things with us that will make us feel a little bit at home. I know as a filmmaker, when I go on location, I would always bring, like, I had to have this with me. I even brought my coffee maker, honestly, because I didn't know what the hotel was going to have. And those are things that make you feel like, okay, I'm not, this is me. This is my life. I'm going to be here for 3 months. I want to feel,
It
I'm
grounds
going to
you.
miss my
You want to feel
family.
grounded.
Yeah.
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 It's an emotional anchor, and it makes,
Yeah.
if you think that, and Don, it is so hard to get rid of things, so I am absolutely sure you did a fantastic job. But practically, we can't have everything if we're moving to a smaller space. Things have to be, there has to be a compromise, but at least you did that. And I guess it is that sense of, how can we not see that this is a person's life? How can we not notice? And the thing is, we haven't. And it's not anybody's fault to a degree, because I think things just get caught up, and you roll through. Generally, it's a crisis, or it's a
Right.
fall, or it's something that's happened. And then you have to do everything really quickly. There's this sense of urgency. So
Right.
there is a sense of sometimes we don't get stuff right all of the time. But if it's on our radar, at least we can go some way to doing it. At least we
Definitely.
can kind of notice that thing is important.
How can we support your model? How can we support material citizenship? What do you? I mean, is this is a government?
Absolutely not. No, I don't even know if I should say this, but our government aren't interested in old people. I mean, that was very clear in COVID that
Yeah.
we don't care about the older people, and we certainly don't care about older people in care homes because they're a drain on our resources. So, could it be a government-led thing? Absolutely not, because I can't imagine that they would ever fund it. So it has to come from people like me that are taking this knowledge and saying, I'm not prepared to just sit on it or it to become another academic publication, or bear in mind that I did that as well. But it's that sense of we have a huge amount of knowledge in relation to dementia research, and we are so poor at turning it into practice. And what we also have is a system in which we have the NHS. So in the NHS, we have our trained doctors, our trained nurses, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, you name it, we've got them. Because they're all trained in through higher education, through universities, the research that we do funnels through. Okay, so there's a learning and development and research and development infrastructure in place. When it comes to care homes, when it comes to social care, the care that we pay for, that isn't in place because it's private companies. Okay, so
It's all for profit.
No, it's not all for profit. There are charities, there are not for profit, but there's also a big section of it that is a for profit. Okay, so they have to take notice and say this is important. They have to buy the training programs. Okay, they have to see it as valuable, and until they do, not all care homes will adopt it. And
Well,
yet,
the only
for
way-
me,
yeah.
this should be the minimum we should expect. It shouldn't be something that is seen as outstanding.
Right.
This should be the minimum in relation to care. So it just takes people like me to keep plugging away. I mean, I left academia last August, and in that time we've got material citizenship into 40 care homes. And
my gosh.
considering the pressures that are on care homes at the moment, that, we've done well, and we'll continue doing that. And yeah, until we care about our older people, I can't ever see it being a government initiative. The most I can hope for is that actually the regulators will take it on board and say, this is what we think you should be doing, which will then maybe influence our, care providers to do that. But also, until we have, really structured training for our care workforce, it's up to their employers as to how well trained they are. And a lot of them will just get mandatory, very basic training. A lot of people that are expected to work with people that are living with dementia may not even have any training, which is just not fair on either person.
Totally. And don't you think it has to go, like, also, a community reach, a reach to the public? Because although the government may not care about the elderly, we do. We care about our people, most of us, right? So that's my goal here in the United States with my documentary is to let people know what's actually going on. Let them know that, as a public, we have power. And
I guess it's that campaigning and lobbying. We have to have our voices heard, because if they're not going to, we need to do it for people. And I think this is why I wanted to make this I looked at it from a rights-based perspective, because that puts us in a more powerful position. Because this isn't just a nice to have. People have the right to this.
It's a human right. Yes, it's a human right. Yes. And I applaud you so much. And I just want to say again, I love the idea of putting big portraits of family members everywhere, not just little snapshots from their activity from last week. I mean, really make it home, so people can be proud to be there. And it's also going to conjure up conversation. It's so simple and so powerful.
Let me share my life with you, and I can do that through the things that I have. Yep. I can demonstrate who I am. I can demonstrate what I like. I can demonstrate who I want to be, and it also influences how you view me. And that can just be something as easy as a coffee cup.
Thank you so much for what you're doing. I love it. I love it so much. It seems so like a no-brainer to me. It feels like it's the only way to go.
It's about valuing the people that are living in your homes, but it's also about valuing the staff that are working in those homes, because, as I say, a lot of them, I very rarely come across anybody that isn't there because they want to make a difference, because they care. And, we need to provide an environment in which they can thrive as well, because if they thrive, the people that live there will thrive too. If people haven't got a good quality of life, then, what are we doing? Medical science has brought us so far that we can live to such a long life. But actually, would I want to live a long life if I had no sense of purpose and had no sense of worth? Actually, no, I'd rather be out, thank you. But I guess the thing is, it doesn't have to be like that. We can do it, and as I've shown with material citizenship, we can do it. It's something that everybody understands, because everybody can relate to it. We all have things. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, your religious background, what country you come from. We all have things that make us who we are, and we can transfer those into these settings. It's something that can be done. We've had some fantastic results from it in relation to people not having medical interventions, by reducing behaviours that other people find challenging, by increasing the quality of life of people living with dementia, and also people that are not living with dementia but are older in a care home that also aren't being heard. So we can turn this around. We can do something about it. It is a very practical application, and it doesn't cost a lot of money.
Love it.
So we can.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant.
Thank you so
Brilliant.
much. Lots to unpack there, but actually really simple. And I hope that it takes off like a storm over across the pond, and that you can bring it over here to the United States, because we really need it. You and Judy Cornish with the Dawn method. Do you know Judy? Yeah. I mean, the two of you are kindred spirits.
Yeah.
And, she changed my life on how I talk to my mother. And the two of you need to just be in a room together and take over. Okay, that's what I said it, and that's the truth.
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen, you guys.
Absolutely.
I love it so much. It's all about love at the end of the day.
It is.
We love the people that we love, and we need to approach everything with love.
And do you know why, Susan?
Why?
No, because love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. So we thank everyone for listening today. We thank our very, very special guest, Dr. Kellyn Lee, and her amazing work she's doing. If you like what you heard, like us, subscribe to us.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. Even if you're listening to this in February.
Happy Valentine's Day.
It doesn't matter. But again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Love Conquers All. Take care, everybody.